Yeah.
I hope everybody's paying attention today because we have a guy calling in from the Midwest, and he's got a little something to talk about bunkers and shelters. And if you've seen the recent movie by Michelle and Barack Obama, it might be something you need to look into. So I want to welcome to the show, Dante Vicino. How you doing, Dante?
Pretty good, John. How are you?
Good, man. Good. So what do we need a bunker for?
I mean, have you been watching the news lately? Have you been watching the news for, I don't know, the last, at least 10 years? I don't know. My answer is I hope we never need bunkers. But historically, it's just been the case that, people need to survive to ride out different events. And whether, if it was just local, catastrophes, acts of Mother Nature or, terrorism or whatever it is, or it was a, worldwide catastrophe, like a real, SHTF scenario. Again, I think the question is really what wouldn't we need it for in the future? I think it's the common denominator across all different kinds of scenarios.
Well, when you think about that, you're kind of selling fear a little bit. It's a little fear. It's a little protection.
I think the fear is already out there, John. People already are hesitant given, what's going on in our country and definitely in the world. I think, and regardless of who's our current president or things like that, I think the fear is already out there. Just turn on your TV. I feel that, what I'm selling is not fear. What I'm selling is a solution, actually. Yeah, I feel like when I talk to people about this, they get a sense of relief. Because they were already feeling the fear.
And you guys have a pretty big name in this space. Why do you guys have a big name? And how did this evolve from your father?
It's really simple. The name is really the reputation that we've built. I think we have just a solid reputation around the world for doing something with a high level of integrity, delivering exactly what we say. And, I think bringing this really niche market to the global audience and in a way that people can afford. What was it a couple days ago? Mark Zuckerberg's bunker got, leaked, the photos of that, right? There are like some aerial photos of it. And people know that the 1% and the 1% of the 1% have that. Bill Gates, right? He has a bunker supposedly under every mansion, is what I've been told. And that's just inaccessible to regular guys like you and me. The government has them. And so that's really our reputation, is that we've been able to do something that pretty much no one else has. And in a way that, again, operating with a really high degree of integrity, which is another thing that you don't really see in this kind of industry. And so we've really carved out that niche for ourselves over the years, and it sticks.
And is it a full-time gig? Are you busy all the time dealing with these things?
Yeah, this is 7 days a week for me sometimes. And I wish there were more hours in the day. It's crazy. I guess I asked for it, kind of stepping into this position, right? I knew I wasn't getting into a 9-to-5, but this is something where, the need, the desire for this, both from a media and publicity perspective, where people are contacting us just like, you guys did, and also from interested, buyers, that doesn't really, it's not seasonal. It's not only on Tuesdays and Thursdays. People think about this. It's throughout the year, And so this is really something that transcends that, kind of typical schedule, and I got to be there to make up for that.
Well, you're in some pretty rural areas, right? And the last name Vicino, what's an Italian guy doing in the country, out in the middle of nowhere?
Oh man, yeah, I don't feel too Italian. It's obviously my dad's side where the name comes from, right? And he's like already a third generation American. If anything, I'm much closer to being German and Russian, because on my mom's side, I'm only a first generation American there. The name is a little more conducive to the Italian image, right? Well, here's the thing. You don't put a bunker in the middle of a city, okay? Or even remotely near one. Okay, because it's unsafe. It's going to be, people are going to know exactly where it is. And then you're going to have to deal with the hordes of people if a catastrophe did happen. And again, this is not saying necessarily a SHTF Think, Hurricane Katrina or anything like that, right? Where there's a mass exodus of people from major, densely populated areas. You want to keep a bunker as far away from that as possible. We've been asked so many times, hey, why don't you guys make one just outside LA? Or why don't you make one outside Vegas or something? And it's like, no, we'll never acquiesce to doing that. And the thing is, if you look at our current biggest project, X Point in South Dakota, we didn't pick that location. The government did. Right? The Army Corps of Engineers back in the 40s decided this is where we want to do this because it was in a central area. It was remote. It had very steady, predictable weather patterns. Nothing, too extreme on either side. There was no tectonic activity. It was outside. Out there? I mean, the closest major urban center is going to be Denver, and that's like a 6-hour drive to the southwest of us. And so again, the government did all that for us, but had that not been there, we would have picked probably the exact same area. We just had the luxury of not needing to.
When we break down one of these places, what does that look like? And how do you come up with a design?
Well, so again, let's stick with like the concept of these, former military bunkers that we've been able to acquire over the years, and or former AT&T bunkers, stuff like that. The design of the outer shell is given, right? It's kind of immutable, because if you were to change that, then you're re-engineering the whole structure. So really, and my background is in architecture, and did my undergrad and grad school in that. And it's funny because in architecture we're always thinking about the morphology of the outside versus the inside, right? There's this kind of these two layers, right? And so we're always thinking about those morphologies, right? And then, but in the case of a bunker, the outside is a given. It is a hard and fast thing that you cannot change. And so really the trick architecturally comes in how you design the interior space, right? How you make all that work, how it becomes comfortable, livable, cohesive. If we were just going off of FEMA standards, FEMA wants you guys to be packed in like sardine cans. If you go through the documents that they have, or any sort of survivable, shelter. And we took those numbers and we padded the hell out of them, because we said, look, this is almost inhumane. Like, yeah, you'll survive, but you're not going to feel comfortable. And again, that was another thing that has always been part of the core, DNA of Vivos, is how do we make this accessible and comfortable, and make it something that, it actually takes, the kind of humanity into perspective, right? It's not just about packing a bunch of people into this cold storage, hoping they'll come out on the other side, so that, again, that's also going back to the reputation bit, that's also a factor in that too, is that we've never compromised on those standards. And so really what you're getting with Vivos is basically 4-star plus quality interiors and accommodations. And it's something that, you can actually really live in. The bunkers in South Dakota are 2,200 square feet apiece. That's a single family home. And so, we're turning these into basically the rough, they're all customized on the inside depending on what the client wants. But, it's going to be a 4-bed, 2-bath, fully autonomous. It has its own, it's completely off grid, its own power generation, its own septic, its own water supply coming from the well and all that. So all of those factors have to work together as we make this design, but we basically turn it into a comfy home. You just notice that there aren't any windows.
Interesting. So how much did one of these 2,200 square foot places cost a fella?
So $55,000 gets you the basic bunker that you can basically do whatever you want with, as long as it's not, like I said, compromising the structure. You can use it as storage. You can outfit it, whatever you want to do. You can kind of glamp it if if you're familiar with that kind of concept. And if you really want to, you can go with us, or you can go with your own independent contractor and turn it into basically a house on the inside. So I personally oversee a crew of about 30 guys right now. And I have a general contractor out there. And that's a huge part of my day to day, is managing the construction, overseeing the construction as we put these things together. Like I said, like a 4-bed, 2-bath. And then that's looking into that. The cost for that then can be whatever, really, it's kind of the sky's the limit. I have some people out there who are making these things $500,000 interiors. and it looks the part. It looks every penny, that it was worth that. But it's up to you. My build costs about 150 to 160,000. So, all told, you're in the low 200,000s to have something that's a comfy, livable home and is also built to survive anything.
Now, I saw your name associated with some productions. What is like a production company or film crew or movie? What are they looking for from you?
I think the first thing that's on everybody's mind is to figure out whether or not I'm crazy. And because I think, for a lot of people, it's still kind of out there, the concept of, making bunkers. And I think the first thing that they try to see is, okay, is this like some spectacularly out there crazy, let's put it on Vice or something and see how wacky these people are. And then I think it's really eye-opening when they see that, we're a company run by just normal people. We're trying to make something for normal people that even given the context of, this really out there bunker concept, right? How much the surprising part, the story is usually this is how normal it actually is. This is how it's like they don't expect how expectable it is on the inside. And the same goes for all the people involved too, in the operation.
Now, when you're thinking about this with your dad getting involved with this, I mean, where are you originally from and how did your dad first approach this business?
He started the company in 2008, and at the time I was, still in high school. I'm only 30, and he had been a lifelong entrepreneur. He had been doing real estate development. Most recently, and of course in 2008, that was the worst time to be in real estate. And so he kind of dissolved that persona of himself and had to reinvent himself. And so he went to this kind of crazy concept that he'd been, thinking about since the 70s or 80s even. And it turned into Vivos and what it is today. And then so my involvement, initially I was really against it. I thought, he was nuts. I thought it was just like, how could you do this, Dad? This is insane. I know you're going to start another business one way or the other, but why this, And so I really pushed back a lot as a kid. And then, as time went on, in 2012 was when I started my architecture program at University of San Diego. And I started immediately learning CAD and, how to render and stuff like that. So he had been outsourcing these kind of artistic renders of the interior concepts and stuff like that. So he was getting frustrated with that part of the process. And so he asked me, hey, Dante, can you just make a render for me? Just an artistic, just show people kind of what it looks like. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll try. And so I would, do a little thing for him. I'd send it to him and then I'd put it away in a folder that I knew later on I might, use in like my portfolio or something, right? And so I just kind of tuck it away and didn't want anything to do with it. And then as I was going through, grad school, that this was an avenue that I actually really wanted to pursue and that there was something good in it for me and something really unique, something that no one else can really lay claim to, which as an architect is kind of that like holy grail that we're always looking for. Is like, what is your niche and what is something that only you can really bring to the world in that special way? And so he would send me out there and I had to work up from the bottom, man. It was like, I was out there shoveling, manure and doing all sorts because it's a cattle ranch as well, by the way. We got about, 800 head of Black Angus out there, roaming the pastures in between the bunkers, around them and the surrounding areas. And I just kind of fell in love with it. And I just got to meet all the different people out there and just see it was just this blue collar job that I had out there, and I fell in love with it. And then eventually I just started hiring help and managing, and here we are so, over the years.
Interesting.
And it's something that I'm really proud of. I still will, push back when when the topic of SHTF comes up open in saying that. I've, said it on camera many times before. This is just super cool, right? It's to put it bluntly, it's off grid, kind of avant-garde. It's cutting edge in a way, but we're not using billion-dollar tech industry stuff, right? The kind of repurposing of these, it's in a way that has its own kind of green, method, doing doing something that I when I get to interact with our clients and, I make an architectural, design for the inside, I, do a floor plan or whatever it is, seeing these people kind of light up and just making something that I know they're going to be proud of and bringing this community of people together, that's the kind of stuff that keeps me motivated and keeps me going, right? And not the, oh my God, everything's going to go to crap and blah, blah, I don't dwell on that stuff because it's not enough to keep me motivated. If that was the case, I'd probably just go stick my head in the sand.
Oh, how many families do you have out there now? Are they hanging out?
Yeah, there's so we have about a little, over 200 bunkers are sold out there, but not everybody lives out there. And in fact, it's always been a minority of that, larger community that lives out there. Right now, it's about 50 families, I think, that are living out there full time. And again, that's another misconception is that, they're out there because they're worried, it's SHTF right now. Well, no, it's, a lot of them actually moved out. A huge reason for that was 2020, and COVID and the riots and stuff that were going on in major cities being burned down, and so that was a huge motivator for people to get out of where they were in places like San Francisco, LA, Dallas, Atlanta, Chicago, Detroit, you name it. People were fleeing those places to go out into the countryside, and these people just happened to have their bunker, and so they just made that their residence. And it's also people who want to have this just kind of rural off-grid lifestyle. I think I'm seeing a lot of people that are interested in that with or without the the survival aspect of it, but it's kind of a given if you were out there anyway that you're already in that mode. So it's funny, I was getting interviewed by some British reporter a few months ago, and he said every time he hears of a school shooting, his first thought is I should just move out to the countryside, and he's in LA. And I said, yeah, I think a lot of people are probably feeling the same way, and not necessarily a school shooting is the only, impetus for that, but, fill in the blank, right? And he was even asking me, he was like, well, how could you ever want to live like that? And that's got to be just rough and horrible and, all this stuff. And I said, well, hang on, man. I said, our neighbors, the neighboring properties to us are ranches, cattle ranches. And then a few miles up the road is a rural town called Edgemont, but it's a town nonetheless with services and, schools and all kinds of stuff, right? Gas station, grocery store, restaurant, bar. And so it's like, it's really the only thing that separates, the community that's living out there right now at X Point, say, from our neighbors is just that, we're living in bunkers, but the lifestyle is very much the same. Anybody who lives out there, even if you just had a cabin out there in that part of the country, you have to be, pretty self-reliant. It's a testament to being able to take care of yourself and not having everything at your fingertips like we do here in San Diego, let's say, and so for some people it's kind of maybe they want to prove it to themselves, or they just have always desired that, and so maybe they get to retire into that. But there's all these reasons already. Not a single one of them has anything to do with, with Armageddon.
I don't know if you've seen this wonder of the world in Turkey. I think it's between Turkey, Iran, that area.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the name of it. They consider it like a temple, and it was where thousands and thousands of people lived underground.
I think it's Cappadocia, right?
Yeah, Cappadocia.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about building any more like a city under there, like connecting these things, like where people could interact?
Yeah, I mean, it could be done. I guess it would be a huge engineering process, right? It would be major engineering to do that. So if the capital was there and the desire was really there, then sure. I think it's entirely doable. And only in a true lockdown situation at X Point, would you be confined to your own place with whoever's in there with you and not able to go out and visit and interact with the other community members. But again, what would constitute a lockdown is really really bad stuff happening right on your doorstep. Bad stuff
Mm-hmm.
was happening elsewhere in the world, and it was safer just to be there. You're still probably not locking your door, you know? So it would be, you know, something like Yellowstone going off or a major nuke or, you know, anything like that. If that was the reason to really lock down, then you'd have to. But otherwise, you know, it's I think just the virtue of being out there gives you a degree of safety and peace of mind without the need to completely lock your blast door. Now, in other cases, you know, the other facilities that we have are, you know, these kind of all-in-one cohabitation. You know, it's basically like a cruise ship underground, right? And so everybody has their kind of dormitories, if you will, and their own bedrooms, but then you can go into the common areas and whatnot. So those are not being actively inhabited unless there was a disaster that would require the use of that. But, you know, we're looking at expanding into much larger underground facilities that we found in the US that basically could serve as entire cities underground. That have that kind of square footage.
When you think about that, when you talk about Yellowstone or whatever, let's say there is a disaster and there's lava and there's shit that cover these places up. How the hell are you going to get out of there?
Yeah. No, I hear you. You know, it's funny because in some of these bunkers in different parts of the country, if flooding or, you know, like say if the Mississippi, you know, ran over kind of thing, you know, we actually have rafts. We have escape tunnels that can be vented, right? So you can vent the water out of them, and then you'd have a raft once you get on the surface. You know, some sort of a really long winter that could be caused by, you know, ash or something from a volcanic eruption. You know, eventually you would be able to make it out. I mean, hell, even in the wintertime, it's sometimes you got to just shovel your way out the front door, but that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, that it's a bunker problem. The best answer is that, you know, you want to prepare for as long as you can inside, right? To give yourself as much as you need. You know, we always recommend a minimum of 1 year, right? And you know, and if you look at the statistics, most critical events, catastrophes, whether man-made or natural, tend to pass in about 90 days, or at least the kind of the crux of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
As far as being able to get yourself out and you know, egress, you know, we plan on having things like, you know, we install inward swinging doors so that, you know, nothing could block it from the outside. You don't have to like push against something outside to get it open. We have secondary escape routes in the, you know, in different parts of the bunker, so that you could egress. Not necessarily the most comfortable thing. It's not going to be how you're going to get in and out of there every day, but it's an escape, you know, nonetheless. But in the worst case, you know, scenario, you want this thing to be able to survive and support you. You know, have the life support necessary. You know, air filtration, water filtration, sewage, all these other things, electricity, so that you could stay under there, you know, minimum of a year.
And being out there, do you ever, you know, I'm a Native American and I talk about this a lot on my show, and I'm a clairsentient as well. So I have some spirituality things going on. You're out there in, you know, this area. Is there any like odd stuff going on? Is there, you know, Native American things going on, spirituality stuff, you know?
In that part of the country, there's a very large Native American presence. And, you know, I feel that land is very spiritual. And I don't know if I would call myself an empath, but I mean, I have had a lot of deeply spiritual experiences in my life, things that make me, you know, very much a believer, you know, and in basically, you know, metaphysical things, right?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty convinced that, you know, in general, it's not to say that, you know, there's no place for science. I think science just has to find ways to catch up to what ancient cultures knew, you know? And so, you know, it's out there. There was this one story that I'll share with you. This was a few years ago. It was either 2019 or 2020. And I was out there, and there was a Native American family who they were just kind of visiting. And they said that was their ancestral land before the government came there. And I was kind of preparing for this to be like this, oh God, it's a burial ground, or there's something like, now it's, we tainted it, or the government tainted it. And they said that, they were happy with how the community that the government built, right, to make it an active military base out there, with how that community thrived. Right. And how positive and productive it was, even though it was for wartime. Right. That was the sole purpose of that, was a munitions depot. And then now seeing, that kind of spirit of the place left. And then now it's to protect people. Right. Not to make war. And this family was saying that they completely endorse what we're doing. And they feel that it's like the highest good of this place. It's the highest good that it could be used for now, and also having, livestock and all that. And I think it's funny because it's hard to describe, but when people go there, and I still feel this myself, I think there's a very calming sense to it. There's like an energy in the earth there. And even if it might be no different than that of, important historical places. They talk about the energetic. I don't want to make it sound bad, but it's almost like this residual that a place like, say, Notre Dame. You go there and you feel the weight of it there, right? It feels like all the hundreds and hundreds of years, right, of history from everybody having gone through there. And I think this feels similar to that. It has this kind of energy residue from generations of people living there and using the place, and it's like calming in a way. It's you probably, again, if you've ever had kind of these spiritual, if you've gone to I think a spiritual place, you feel that kind of invigorating yet soothing. Yeah, because just invigorating could be agitating, but just soothing could be, it means that there's not all this extra, it's like there's some level of commotion that was left with that, but it's also very, very, steady, and it has the effect of really changing skeptics' minds when they go out to visit it.
I say that because if you understand law of attraction, mm-hmm. and obviously there's some type of law of attraction going on there. So do you feel like all the people that are there now have a very similar tone? Because tone attracts tone.
Well, I think so, yeah. And I'm a huge believer in law of attraction, manifestation, and all that. And it's something that's been very important in my life, actually. And we have a vetting process. So we get sometimes, hundreds and hundreds of applications on our website for space in any one of our bunkers every week. And we have to filter through those. Now, there's always going to be the spam, and there's going to be, whatever, the AI stuff. But then as you sift through that and you find the people there, sometimes people will just, they don't want to answer any questions. They don't have any questions. They just want to throw their money at us. And it's like, well, hang on, dude. We're not that simple. It's like, we got to talk. We got to have a phone interview. Usually takes an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. It depends. And really just to see if they sound like a reasonable and decent human being, mm-hmm. Someone that we feel would be a good fit, and someone that hopefully we could feel safe around. It was funny because one time I talked to a retired detective and his wife, and he said, so when's the interview start? After about 45 minutes of talking, I said, this whole time. Yeah. And I said, in your line of work, don't you think you could, suss a person out talking to them for that amount of time? He said, I could probably do it in 15 minutes. I said, well, there you go. And that's a professional. It's a trained professional, seasoned, mm-hmm. Been doing that his whole life. Right. And so that's really what we're looking to find, is that, hey, this person seems like they would really get along with everybody out there. And we like to see that.
So I know you probably get approached with maybe some jobs outside of your realm. Is there anything you've done that is kind of crazy, like build a bunker that, you're not supposed to talk about, or something that's lavish, or just something oddly wild that would be very interesting to the people listening? Is there something crazy out there you've done to build one of these things?
Yeah, I mean, the scope of some of the stuff that we've done outside of the U.S. is pretty mind blowing. When I was saying earlier about normal things, that's just we keep the normal stuff for here. Everything that we do is outside of X Point, of course. Everything else that we do is, very guarded just to protect the place. Because again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. And if we had one of these outside of LA, everybody would know where it is. If you had, the backyard bunkers, right, which have been selling for a long time from different companies, your whole neighborhood's going to know. That is not, you're going to have to get permits probably for that too. You know what I mean? The city's going to know. And so to have these things, be discreet, and it's not even so much in what we're putting in there that makes it amazing. It's just like the level of secrecy that has to go into this, and so it was really, really rubbed all of us the wrong way at first, and make the hair on the back of your neck stand up when we did X Point. And then we're like, okay, we're just going to let everybody know where it is. You can go on Google Maps and it drops a pin right in the middle of the property. Here we are. And it was just like that was so different, because I mean, we one time we had a certain very large cable TV network that everybody would be very familiar with come out and do a piece in our Indiana bunker. And it was funny, what I again, this was years ago. I was in school, so Robert was handling this one. But the amount of NDAs that had to be signed was just one thing. And then we had to pick them up from the airport, and this crew of like 4, 5, 6 or whatever, take all their cell phones, right? Put them in a bag, load them into the back of a blackout Sprinter van, drive them to this place, go into the garage, close the door, then let them out, let them do their filming for the day, and then reverse the process to get them back out, so that, they had no sense of where they were going. And again, this was all signed and they agreed to it. It wasn't, felt like we were kidnapping them, but they agreed to it for the sake of getting the shoot, because we weren't just going to say, hey, we're at this and this street, come over, because it's not even that, say Robert and I need these places to be kept secret. It's actually the owners themselves want those places to be kept secret. It's their interest is in protecting it to that degree, right? They don't want anybody to know where they've got what they've got. And so sometimes the lengths that you have to go to satisfy that are just, it's funny. It feels like something out of a movie or something.
Well, did y'all start this because of witness protection? That's why you're Italian?
No, man, don't make me talk about cousin Giuseppe, okay? He knows a few things and knows a few people, okay? Yeah. Don't get me started on Vinny. Vinny, he's a very capable and talented man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No, it's got nothing to do with that. No, it was. If you ask Robert, he'll say it was election day 2008.
I like to unearth things like this. I mean, you go into this and you look at your presence. I mean, you have some digital presence and so forth, but I can see why people are so intrigued just by listening to you talk. You know what I mean?
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I try to, it can be such a downer and so depressing, the premise of this company existing, the reason that it's even, necessary in the world. And so I try to make it my personal mission to make it something that's relatable and approachable for people, and to make people, feel good about it, right? I'm not a Pollyanna type by any means, but I think there's something to be said about understanding the positives in this. And, that's kind of the angle that I like to strive for. And just kind of just being able to share a little bit of that stoke, I like being able to feel stoked about something. It's a good feeling, And if we're talking law of attraction, then, I believe firmly that the more you do that, the more you're kind of going with the flow, kind of, moving with the stream, right? As Abraham Hicks would say, for example, and not struggling against it. And really the feeling really gets to me that comes across when I talk to clients and all that is this sense of relief that this exists, and they may have never even thought it possible to exist, right? They might have thought that the question of what are we going to do if is unanswerable, or at least to a certain degree, they can say, well, I can have food and guns and stockpile and whatever. But if you don't have a solid roof over your head, then what does it matter, right?
Yeah.
And so for a lot of people, the sense of relief that they get when they talk to us and when they see what it is that we've created here, right? It's really touching, right? And you can feel it, and I love sharing that feeling. Right. And so, when you started this off by saying, well, you're kind of selling part of fear, like I said, John, the fear's already out there. The fear is there.
Well,
So
that's why I mentioned that Obama thing. You see that Obama movie that Michelle and Barack back? Did you see that movie?
I haven't watched it yet. I feel like I might have to from a professional do my homework kind of standpoint. But it's not necessarily a movie that I would want to watch. You know what I mean? I just got done watching Billions, all 7 seasons. So I was like, I want more of that right now, So, but I've heard of, the premise of that movie and how there's a lot of in your face, but then there's also a lot of subliminal things in there, that point to what might actually be happening, how much of it is a satire, how much of it is commentary on fears, and how much of it could even be seen as, a wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of move, right?
Well, and the last question I do want to ask is, how many people can you house with all your facilities you have going on total?
Not enough. That's the real answer, is not enough. This is always, it might be, all said, we could be looking at maybe only 250,000. A standpoint of actually wanting to, provide this to as many people as possible, then that's always kind of the catch, right? It's like it goes back to what I was saying about FEMA. Well, sure, we could triple the number of people in any one of these, but it ain't gonna be comfy. You know what I mean? It's not going to be something that you're going to be happy with. And it goes against our virtues at that point, And so if, my goal here is to keep making these things, make them as good as we can, right? Stick to our guns with every single one of them, and just do it for the right people, make sure that, people are getting exactly what they want here. And I do wish that maybe someday there's an angel investor or something that comes through and allows us to make, 10 of these that we never knew we could, right? And just dot them across the world. It would be amazing.
Well, the trade alone is worth a lot, I think. Just understanding the trade, even if you haven't built them yet, and something needs to be prepared for, just understand that trade. I would imagine there's not a lot of people that understand this trade.
No, and that's true. Going back to what I was saying earlier about the build outs in the bunkers in South Dakota at X Point, we have a construction crew that I've kind of handpicked and worked with and very much molded to understand how to work in a bunker. And we have all climbed that learning curve together. And so if someone comes in and they said, well, yeah, I'll take a crack at it, maybe I can do this for myself. And it's like, more power to you. Okay. Because we got a backlog, we're like a year and a half out, right? Because so many people ordered build outs through us. But it's like, you're going to climb that learning curve all over. Whereas my crew, we have the expertise, right? We've already done that learning curve. And so we could basically write the book on, how to build and outfit a bunker. Yeah. We had a crew come out from Florida recently to do some structural concrete repairs, and some superficial and some structural concrete repairs on certain bunkers. And they were really good concrete guys, but they were used to, working in regular homes, right? Or offices and whatever, and working on those. And so I told him, I said, look, we got to draw the line here. Just because no one's stepping on each other's toes. You guys are the experts in what you do, but you have to respect the fact that I'm the expert in what I do. And so I need to be able to tell you what is acceptable and what isn't for a bunker, and then you come in and help me with how you can, right? And so it was kind of like, okay, we had to just get that all shook out at the beginning, right? And make sure everything was fine, and we got common ground, and it was really, really great. And I'm eager to see these guys back out there again next year. They kind of took the winter off, but it was very much in that sense where it's like, if you take a step back, yeah, shit, I guess we are the experts in this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and we have been approached in the past to design something and kind of make it a Vivos bunker, but they're just going to take the plans and go have it built wherever, somewhere in in Asia or South America. And we're happy to do that too, that to be like a consulting firm in a way.
Yeah.
That's a huge avenue for expansion too, that if I can't necessarily mobilize my crew and resources internationally to those places, then at least we know that we can set something up in a completely different part of the world, that can have the local crews make it, but make something that we could put our name on. And so I see that as a really good avenue going forward as well, at least on an international scale. In the US, I'd like to be able to move my guys around for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's every day you're climbing the learning curve. But I feel like we've climbed it enough at this point to really be considered experts in this field.
Well, cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. And
Hell yeah,
it
man.
was very,
it was fun.
yeah, very, very interesting conversation. And if you're looking for the Michael Jordan of bunkers and shelters, this is the company, Vivos, Vivos Group. And this is the showrunner here, Dante Vicino, and his dad running this thing. And appreciate you coming on, and it's been interesting.
My pleasure, man. It's fun talking to you about this. So
my name's John Edmonds Cosma, the CEO of Bang Productions. Thank you.